Don't judge a book by its cover, except that's what we do when we buy books. Every single one of us does it. We walk past a table of new releases, or we scroll through a grid of thumbnails online. And in a split second, we decide what's worth picking up. The cover made that call for us before we read a single line. So when I sat down to publish my debut thriller, Redacted, one decision looms larger than any sentence I wrote inside the manuscript. It's the choice of who to trust to design the face of the book. Welcome back to Fireside Writer. I'm TJ Stecker. If you've been following along, you know I made the call to self-publish Redacted this fall. I'm going fully independent with it, which means every decision a publisher would normally make now lands on my desk. Today I want to walk you through the one that I've thought about the hardest, choosing a cover artist, and what it taught me about everything a cover has to do before a reader ever gives it a chance. Let's start with why this deserves so much of my attention. Here's the hard truth. Most readers will never read a word of your book before they decide whether to even consider it. They see a thumbnail, the size of a postage stamp, sitting in a grid among 40 other titles. In that fraction of a second, the cover has to do an enormous amount of work. It has to say what kind of book this is, who it is for, and all while quietly proving that a professional made it. Get that wrong, and it does not matter how good your writing is. Nobody even gets to your first chapter. When I flew P-3s for the Navy, you could read a person before they said a word. The flight suit, the wings, you knew their world at a glance. A book cover is the same first read for a book. It's a promise about the experience waiting inside. And a reader can feel within a heartbeat whether that promise is being kept or broken. Think about your own bookshelf for a second. The books you reach for again and again almost always look like they belong with the others you love. That is no accident. It is a designer speaking the visual language of a genre fluently. And that fluency is worth paying for. The genre sets the rules. Here's something a lot of new authors miss. There is no single standard for a good cover. That standard shifts completely depending on genre. And readers have been trained for thousands of books about certain things to expect from certain signals. Break those signals and you don't look original, you look lost. Walk through romance and you see warm color and an illustrated couple in a flowing script. Step into fantasy and you get sweeping landscapes under ornate lettering that promises scale. My shelf is mostly military mystery and political thriller. And it speaks its own language, big, bold typography. The author name swelling larger than the title once a name carries weight. A lone figure set against weather or wreckage. Hardware like a fighter or a warship. High contrast, usually cool tones with one hot accent burning through the middle of it. A reader scrolling past sees that and instantly knows exactly what kind of book to expect. Those conventions exist for a reason. They are a handshake of trust between an author and a reader. My job is to honor the expectation of the reader, while still saying something that feels like me. If this is useful so far, do me a favor, hit that like and subscribe. I'm documenting my whole self-publishing journey in real time, the wins and the lessons, and I would love to have you along for it. Here's where I got a little obsessed, and my own taste led me somewhere a little risky. I love old pulp covers. The painted crime and thriller paperbacks from the middle of the last century. Hand-painted figures and lurid, saturated color you could feel from across a drugstore rack. There's a heat in that work that a lot of modern stock photography has sanded smooth. Those covers were never subtle, and that was the whole point. They promised danger and pulled you in by the collar. I wanted to bottle a little of that energy for Redacted, because my book comes with the same pulse running throughout it. So I chased a painted, illustrated quality, a central image with real weight to it. But then I realized I had to stay honest to myself about one thing. A cover that leans too hard in 1958 reads as dated in 2026. And it can scream amateur when I wanted it to whisper vintage. The craft is in borrowing the spirit of those pulp covers, while still landing inside what the modern thriller reader expects. That balance is precisely the thing I did not trust myself to nail alone, and it is what sent me looking for a professional. Before I requested a single quote, I did something I would recommend to anyone at this stage. I wrote a real brief and gathered a small stack of comps from inside my genre, the covers that actually made me stop scrolling. And I thought about exactly what I responded to in each one. I described the mood I was after, the collision of painted pulp energy and clean modern thriller. And I flagged the typography and color palette I kept turning back to. I also told every designer the same crucial thing up front. This is book 1 of a series. Whatever we make has to work as a template, because the cover we land on will carry across every Coburn book that follows. A designer who hears that early thinks about the work differently. They are building a system, and that is a very different ask than a one-off. So with that brief in hand, I went shopping. And I want to be transparent about every option I weighed, because the range out there is genuinely wide. First, I looked at MIBLART. MIBLART is a design studio a lot of indie authors swear by, with a clear process and a turnaround that keeps your launch on schedule. Solid, dependable work, and a real contender from the start. But then I looked at Dibbly, the platform that used to be known as Urban Writers. Dibbly is all-in-one author services, where you can pull cover design together with formatting and other production help, choosing from a deep roster of creators. For an author who wants several pieces handled under one roof, it is a genuinely appealing model. Next, I went to Reedsy, a curated marketplace for vetted freelance designers. I'd used them before for some editing help, and I picked several designers and requested quotes from them. This is where I watched the numbers swing the most, because on Reedsy, you are choosing the individual artist and their track record, and that spread tells you a lot about who has worked at the very top of the craft. I even chased down an option most authors never even think about, Bowker. Bowker is the company that issues ISBNs here in the US. So nearly all of us end up in their site to register a book anyway. It turns out they sell cover design too, so I pulled those details as well, just to be thorough. I'll tell you who I picked and why in just a second. The decisions and the small details that don't fit inside this video, I'll explain on my website, tjstecker.com. If you want that version, plus a free short story when you join, head over to tjstecker.com and sign up. It is the best seat in the house for following this journey from the inside. Okay, here's the call. I went with the designer I found on Reedsy, and it turned out he was the most expensive of all the options I covered. And that gave me pause, but I think he's my best fit. Here's why. His initial concepts were almost like he was reading my mind. Something just clicked. It was exactly what I was trying to convey in my brief. He had the same thoughts on his direction that I had been trying to convey. Every designer I spoke with was capable, but his concepts just felt right for my own book. The way I want a reader to feel when they see it. Next, he had a great portfolio. He's done cover designs for James Patterson, one of the best-selling thriller writers alive. That's the kind of track record that mattered to me. His work has literally lived on the shelves I am aiming for, and this is a designer who has sat exactly where I am trying to go. And this is about my debut. The first impression my author name makes is going to be shaped by someone who's made a lot of strong ones. Once I framed it that way, the price became a lot easier to live with. Here's a detail that truly set him apart. He asked to read my entire book before he designs the cover. He's the only one who asked that. Everyone else was ready to work from a blurb and a few comps, which is completely normal in this business. But he wanted to sit with the actual story first, to understand the weight of what he uncovers before he ever puts a single element on the page. For a writer, that feels like the difference between a cover that decorates the book and one that understands it. He was straight with me about the timing, and I appreciated that. I'm expecting finalized covers in about a month. It's a reasonable turnaround time, and it should be fine to meet my October launch date. And that brief I mentioned, the one that states that this book is part of a series, is the other reason this decision carries so much weight. The cover I land on now isn't a single purchase. It becomes the visual identity of everything that follows. The typography and the feel of it will carry into every book in the series. If I get this first one right, I walk away with a template, and I can hand that down the road to a designer and say, match this energy. So this helps make the money make the most sense to me. Let me be straight about it, because I know most of you are wondering. Cover design is going to be my largest investment in this entire process. And I made peace with that. The cover is the very first thing a reader will meet. I would rather invest where it does the most good than try and save a little and sabotage the book I spent years writing. And here's the part that actually makes this efficient over time. Once book 1 establishes the look, I can bring that established style to a more affordable designer down the road. The big effort goes into the book that sets the standard, and every book after that gets easier. If you're making the same decision right now, here's what I'll tell you. Write the brief before you spend $1, and learn the visual language of your genre. That alone will put you ahead of most first-time publishers. And if this is book 1 of a series, remember that first book influences all the books that follow. So weigh that long game when you choose. Now, I can't promise you I got every part of this right. I will know a lot more once the cover is finished and that book is out in the world. That's when the readers will vote with their attention. But I made this call with my eyes open, and I feel good where I landed. So that was my decision and my thinking behind it. I'll reveal the actual cover here on the channel, and I cannot wait for you to see it. I hope it captures exactly what I'm reaching for. So, if you've self-published, tell me who designed your cover, or would you hire them again? Let me know in the comments. I read every single one. I'm learning as much from all of you as you might be learning from me. So until next time, take that first impression seriously, and I'll see you by the fire.